I'm Rafe Nauen, and I've been working in the family constellation therapies for about 10 years now. I got introduced to it through some psychotherapeutic work that I was doing at the time, and it led on to working with constellations. And as soon as I'd done, I suppose, 2 workshops, I was hooked, and I wanted to train in it, and I knew that it was something that would be interesting to me to do. So yeah. Well, it's developed out of a whole load of strings. If you can think of Native Americans sitting round around the campfire, and the elders asking questions of the children and the young men and the young women in the tribe, they would be doing some shamanic work, which is sort of a founder member of what constellations is now. The work's primarily been done by a guy called Bert Hellinger in Germany, and they've done extensive research into constellations, and basically it's the stuff that we carry with us that brings us to who we are right at this moment. All the good, all the bad, all the ancestors, and everything that happened to them contributes to who we are as people today. So if there are things missing, say for example there was a child that died or something like that, which is horrible for the parents, terrible for the parents, but they may get on with their lives by having another child, and then they don't talk about the child who died, and the next child is brought up as the first child. So they feel just out of sync with the world, and they spend their life saying things like, "Oh, I don't feel like I belong," or they go to work and they can't quite find their place. They're not quite sure who they are, and so it can help everybody in those kinds of realms and lots of other realms. Well, the workshops can benefit absolutely anybody, and I've yet to meet someone who wasn't moved by what happened at their first workshop. The workshops ideally take place over a weekend or 3 days even, with about 15 to 20 people, and that gives time for each person to do some work of their own. The workshop comprises people sitting around in a circle, and a person who is ready to work will come and sit beside me and talk to me about the facts of their life. They obviously got a mother and father, but what happened to them? Maybe they were in the war and were displaced by something that happened in the war, or maybe they were connected with the Irish famine, or there'll be some story that is factual. They don't want to know that their parents weren't very nice or anything like that. Those are opinions. They're not factual. Having worked with the facts, that person will then choose people from the workshop to represent themselves, their mother, their father, and whoever else comes up in that conversation. And they set them up. They put their hands on their shoulders and they move them to a place in the circle of chairs that feels right. That's the only way to describe it. And even ardent skeptics genuinely find a place that feels right, and once they've moved them there, they then sit down, and that's when the constellation itself begins. What I'll do is I'll look to see what's going on, and it may be that somebody looks like they're excluded or they want to leave, and I'll inquire how they're feeling. And they may say something like, "I feel really cold," or "I don't want to be here," or "I can't manage," or there'll be some phrase that comes from that bit of information. And that's what we work with. And once we've done that, we can start having dialogues between the different people within that constellation workshop. And the dialogue and movement, we can move people, we can maybe the parents are there and the children are behind. Ideally, children will be in front going into the future, and parents are behind supporting them. So there's stuff that we can work with to generate a change in the energy of their family experience. And that's what the workshop is all about. which is why it's a one-off and very powerful and very easy. Well, it is the work itself, really. That constellation. The reason that it's called a constellation is when you look at the plough in the sky, the stars may be 1 million miles apart that way and 1 billion miles apart that way, but you still see them in context in relation to you, where you're standing on Earth. If you were standing on Mars, the plough would look completely different. And that's what you're dealing with. So it's how those things appear in relation to you, and the energy that you're working with. Just seeing it, knowing that you've got, you know, an older brother who died, or, you know, just feeling that energy releases it. It can be quite emotional. The constellation workshops, I've never yet run a constellation where a box of tissues wasn't required. So yeah. Well, at the moment I'm running workshops pretty much every month at the Days Hotel in Derby. The website has got all the details of the latest dates of those workshops. So if they get bigger, I'll hold it somewhere else. If they're smaller, I'll hold it somewhere else. So it varies. You can do one-to-one workshops using play people as representatives for those energies. They're not quite as strong, they're not quite as deep, but they're very good just the same. And you know, you've got to work with what you've got. No, the workshops can have a whole range. It's inevitably the people that are going to come on any kind of workshop like that are going to be open to looking, and that's the only criteria, really. But I mean, businesses work well with it too. If you know, there may have been a family firm that was set up by somebody in 1820, Grandpa will still be sitting in the boardroom today, guaranteed. And you know, if you can find a place for Grandpa, give him a chair. You know, whatever it is, whatever's needed. Have a laugh about it. Have a joke. You know, put a drink out. Maybe he always drank gin and tonic or something. Have a gin and tonic on the table, just to give him a place. That may stop somebody else having to behave like Grandpa every time there's a board meeting. Those sorts of things. So it can work well with business. It can work with any walks of life, really. There's no target group at all. I think it's really taking a look at the ancestral voices that bring us to be who we are. So yeah.